Most people hand over their license and never drive home the same person. Here is what I mean. You get pulled over. You roll down your window. You hand the officer your license before they say a single word. And in that one instinct, that one completely automatic move, you just handed law enforcement the entire foundation they need to extend your stop, justify a search, and build a case against you. You did not even know it happened. I have reviewed hundreds of traffic stop cases. I have watched body cam footage where composed, cooperative drivers end up searched, arrested, or charged, not because of what they did wrong on the road, but because of what they did in those first few seconds at the window. And the one thing every single one of those stops had in common: the driver handed over their license before they asked one question. That question is the difference between a 2-minute stop and a 40-minute nightmare. Before you ever hand your license to an officer again, you need to hear this. And if you are new here, subscribe right now, because this channel is dedicated to one thing: making sure you know your rights before you need them, not after. Stay with me through this entire video. By the end, you will know the question, why it is constitutionally protected, and the 5 mistakes drivers make in the moments around the license handover, the mistakes that flip a routine traffic stop into something far more serious. This is educational content to help you understand your rights. For specific legal advice, please consult a licensed attorney in your state. Now let us get into it. Mistake number 1 is handing your license before establishing why you were stopped. Picture this. You get pulled over. The officer walks up, and before they say a word, you are already reaching for your wallet. It feels right. It feels cooperative. But here is the legal problem. You just complied with the stop before anyone stated the constitutional basis for it. Under Delaware v. Prowse, decided by the Supreme Court in 1979, police cannot randomly stop vehicles to check licenses and registration without articulable reasonable suspicion. There has to be a stated legal reason. Before you pass over a single document, you say this calmly and politely: "Officer, what is the reason for this stop? Officer, what is the reason for this stop? Officer, what is the reason for this stop?" Here is why that matters. When you ask that question, you put the legal foundation of the stop on the record before you comply with anything. The body cam captures the officer stating the reason. That statement is now documented. Here is the wrong way on body cam. Officer walks up. Driver immediately hands the license. Officer says you ran that red light. Driver accepts it. Stop proceeds, with no documented record of the stated reason before compliance. Now the right way. Officer walks up. Driver says, "Officer, what is the reason for this stop?" Officer responds, "You failed to signal your lane change." Driver says, "I understand. Here are my documents." That exchange is now on camera. If that reason turns out to be inaccurate or legally insufficient, your attorney has something to work with. Officers build their case from the moment they approach. The reason for the stop is the foundation of everything: the ticket, the investigation, any search. A shaky foundation can get evidence suppressed. This is not confrontation. It is documentation. Stay calm. Stay polite. Hand your documents over only after you hear the stated reason. Bottom line on mistake 1, your license is your compliance, and giving it before the reason is stated removes your first and best opportunity to create a legal record that protects you later. That puts the reason for the stop on record before you hand over anything. But here is the problem most people never see coming. Once that license leaves your hand, a second officer can appear, and the entire dynamic of the stop shifts before you even realize it. That is mistake 2. Mistake number 2 is handing your license without accounting for the second officer. Here is a tactic used constantly in traffic stops that almost nobody talks about. You hand your license to the officer at your window. That officer walks back to their cruiser. Then a second officer appears at your passenger window, or sometimes at your driver window, and starts asking you questions. The legal problem is this: that second officer is running a parallel investigation. They did not receive your documents. They have no stated reason for engaging you. But because you are already in compliance mode, you already handed over your license, you already established yourself as cooperative, most people just start answering. The body cam on the original officer does not capture the conversation. The second officer's body cam captures your answers and their questions from a completely different angle, with no context about what you said or did not say at the first window. Picture this. Officer 1 takes your license and walks to the cruiser. 30 seconds later, a second officer appears at your passenger window. "Hey, how are you doing tonight? Just coming from somewhere?" You answer casually because you already feel like the stop is winding down. That conversation is now evidence in a separate report. Officers are trained to use this split attention technique precisely because it catches people in their most relaxed moment of the stop. You think the hard part is over. It is not. The correct response when a second officer appears at any window is identical to your response to the first. "Officer, I am invoking my right to remain silent." "Officer, I am invoking my right to remain silent." "Officer, I am invoking my right to remain silent." You do not have to be rude. You do not have to explain. You simply invoke. Under Salinas versus Texas, that verbal invocation is your Fifth Amendment protection, regardless of which officer is asking the questions. In Stop and Identify states, you must provide your name and basic identification to a detaining officer. But a second officer initiating a fresh conversation at a different window does not change your right to remain silent on anything beyond that. Bottom line on mistake 2, handing your license to one officer does not mean you owe answers to every other officer who approaches your vehicle. Protecting yourself from the second officer's questions covers the verbal threat. But there is a physical threat to your rights happening in the same moment, one that most drivers have absolutely no idea they are walking into. That is mistake 3, the phone handover trap. Mistake number 3 is handing your phone to an officer along with your license. Here is how this plays out on body cam constantly right now. Driver pulls up their digital insurance card on their phone. Officer says, "Can I see that?" Driver hands the phone directly through the window. That phone is now in law enforcement's hands. Under Riley versus California, the Supreme Court ruled in 2014 that officers cannot search the digital contents of your phone without a warrant. But that ruling protects you from a search, not from what happens when you voluntarily hand over the device. Once the phone is in the officer's hand, your screen, notifications, and any visible content is observable without technically constituting a search. Officers have used this to extend stops after drivers voluntarily surrender their phones. The correct protocol is simple. If you are showing digital proof of insurance, display it yourself and hold the phone up to the window. Do not hand it through. Say, "I will display my insurance on screen, officer." "I will display my insurance on screen, officer." "I will display my insurance on screen, officer." Every state that accepts digital proof of insurance only requires you to display it, not surrender the device. If the officer insists on holding the phone, say calmly, "Officer, I would prefer to display it myself. I am happy to hold it up, so you can clearly read it." If they push further, say, "Officer, I do not consent to handing over my phone." And subscribe right now, so you never miss these legal protections. Because mistake 4 is where most extended stops and searches actually begin, right after the documents are exchanged. Here is why the phone handover makes your dash cam so critical. The officer's body cam captures the phone in their hand. It does not capture what was or was not on the screen. Your dash cam's interior angle shows exactly what you displayed, how you held the device, and what the officer did with it. In a dispute over digital evidence access, that interior footage is the difference between your attorney filing a successful suppression motion and having no record at all. Mistake number 4 is answering small talk questions after handing over your documents. You have done everything right up to this point. You asked for the reason. You did not hand over your phone. Now the officer takes your documents, walks back to the cruiser, comes back, returns everything to you, and before releasing you, leans on your window and says, "So where are you coming from tonight?" Most people answer. That is mistake 4. Under Rodriguez versus United States, the 2015 Supreme Court case, once the officer has completed the stop's mission, checked your license, issued the ticket or warning, returned your documents, the stop is legally over. Any further questioning must be either genuinely consensual or supported by independent reasonable suspicion of a new crime. When you answer their casual question, you have made the conversation consensual, and you are voluntarily providing new information that can become the basis for extending your detention. Here is the exact exchange. Officer returns your license and warning. Officer says, "So where were you headed tonight?" Driver says, "Just coming from a friend's place." Officer says, "Were you two drinking?" Driver says, "I had a couple beers about 3 hours ago." That exchange just opened a DUI investigation. The driver was not required to participate in it. The correct response the moment questions shift beyond the stop itself is this: "Officer, I am invoking my right to remain silent." "Officer, I am invoking my right to remain silent." "Officer, I am invoking my right to remain silent." Under Salinas versus Texas, you must say those exact words. Silence alone does not protect you. The verbal invocation is the legal threshold. In stop and identify states like Texas, Florida, and Nevada, you must provide your name and basic identification, and nothing more. Where you have been, where you are going, what is in your car, no requirement to answer any of it. Bottom line on mistake 4. Every word you say after your documents are returned is a voluntary extension of an encounter that has already served its legal purpose. That Fifth Amendment invocation covers your words. But there is a Fourth Amendment trigger most drivers never pull. And missing it keeps people at the roadside far longer than the law requires. That is mistake 5, the exit trap. Mistake number 5 is not asking, "Am I free to go?" the moment your documents are returned. Under Rodriguez versus United States, once the stop's mission is complete, continued detention requires independent, articulable, reasonable suspicion of a new crime. But officers know that most drivers will just sit there, wait, and answer one more question. That passive presence gets treated as a consensual encounter. And once it becomes consensual, the Fourth Amendment protections governing a detention no longer apply the same way. Asking, "Am I free to go?" forces the officer to either release you or state the legal basis for continuing your detention. Here is mistake 5 on body cam. Officer hands back documents. Driver sits quietly. Officer says, "Just one more thing. Mind if I ask what you have in the back?" Driver says, "Just some gym stuff." Officer says, "Mind if I take a look?" Driver says, "I guess, sure." Everything that follows traces back to 5 words never said. The protected version. Officer hands back your documents. Driver says, "Thank you, officer." "Am I free to go?" Officer says, "Yeah, you are good." Driver drives away. Stop over. No extended questioning. No consent given. If the officer says you are not free to go, respond immediately. "I invoke my right to remain silent and I want an attorney. That phrase invokes both your Fifth and Sixth Amendment protections simultaneously. Questioning must stop. Even if the officer says you are free to go and then immediately follows it with, "But can I ask one more thing?" The moment you engage, you have re-entered a consensual encounter. Say, "Officer, I need to be on my way." Then drive. Bottom line on mistake 5. Asking, "Am I free to go?" is not suspicious. It is the legal trigger that requires law enforcement to either end the stop or justify continuing it, out loud, on camera. Before we get to your 4 phrases, here is the physical protocol for the first 30 seconds of any stop. Pull over safely, and use your turn signal. If it is dark, turn on your dome light immediately. This signals transparency and keeps a nervous officer calm. Turn off your engine. Hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, visible at all times. Do not reach for anything until the officer asks. When you do reach, announce it. "I am going to reach for my registration in the glove box." Move slowly. Roll your window 2 to 4 inches and lock your doors. When the officer arrives, say, "Officer, what is the reason for this stop?" Provide your documents only after hearing the reason. Narrate every movement you make. "I am reaching for my wallet now." This builds a verbal record on both cameras. If you are recording, state it once. For everyone's safety, I am recording this interaction as well. Do not argue at roadside. The place to fight an unlawful stop is a courtroom, not the shoulder of a highway. Stay calm. Stay polite. Stay firm. Cooperation does not mean conversation. Now let us lock in your 4 protective phrases. Memorize these. Practice them out loud right now. Phrase 1. Am I free to leave? Am I free to leave? Am I free to leave? Ask this the moment your documents are returned. It forces the officer to either end the stop or articulate legal grounds for keeping you. Phrase 2. I invoke my right to remain silent. I invoke my right to remain silent. I invoke my right to remain silent. Say this the moment questions shift beyond the stated reason for the stop. Under Salinas v. Texas, you must invoke verbally. Silence alone is not sufficient protection. Phrase 3. I want an attorney. I want an attorney. I want an attorney. If you are told you are not free to go, or if arrest seems imminent, these words invoke your Sixth Amendment right to counsel. Questioning must stop. Phrase 4. I do not consent to any searches. I do not consent to any searches. I do not consent to any searches. Say it clearly and specifically. A shrug has been interpreted as consent in court. Your words create the record. Here is the full sequence. Lights flash. Pull over safely. Dome light on. Engine off. Hands visible. Window cracked 2 to 4 inches. Doors locked. Officer approaches. Officer, what is the reason for this stop? Documents returned. Am I free to leave? If yes, drive away. If no, I invoke my right to remain silent and I want an attorney. Search suggested. I do not consent to any searches. One question before the license. 4 phrases after. That is the complete framework. Here is the core principle behind everything covered today. Your license is not just a document. It is the moment of maximum vulnerability during any traffic stop. Every word and every action in the seconds around that handover either protects you or exposes you. Print these phrases out. Practice them before your next drive. This is educational content only and not legal advice. Always consult a qualified attorney in your state for your specific situation. If this helped you understand your rights, hit that like button. And subscribe right now, because this channel exists for one reason: to make sure you know exactly how to protect yourself before you ever need it, not after. Every week, we break down the laws, the cases, and the exact phrases that keep your rights intact when it counts most. Hit the bell so you never miss a video. Share this with every driver you know, because the next person who needs this might get pulled over tonight. Let them see it first. The next video is right here on screen. It breaks down exactly how the Fourth and Fifth Amendments work together across every phase of a traffic stop, beyond the license moment. Watch it now and complete your legal education. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is right now. And tell me, have you ever handed your license before they told you why you were stopped? Drop it below. I read every one.